Welcome to the Care Social, where we discuss the biggest topics in social care right now. Whether you're a health and social care provider, a frontline worker, or are just passionate about making a difference, we're here to bring you expert discussions, insights, and real stories from the sector. I'm Barry, Content Operations and Delivery Manager here at QCS. In this episode of the Care Social, I'm delighted to be talking to Beth Britton, MBE, award-winning content creator, author of D4 Dementia, consultant, campaigner and speaker, trainer and mentor, and specialist in ageing in health and social care. Beth has been described as offering an unparalleled insight, demonstrating knowledge, experience and expertise in dementia that is second to none. Having a gifted ability to convey ideas and experiences, being a constant unyielding advocate of the intrinsic value and diversity of each individual living with dementia, and possessing personal experience, commitment and understanding that challenges all of us to do better. Welcome to the Care Social, Beth.
Thank you, Barry.
Beth, people know you as a long-standing campaigner, consultant, writer and speaker on dementia. For those that are new to your work, can you start telling us a little bit more about your personal journey and what drew you into the world of dementia care?
I can indeed. So I'm a former carer to my dad, who had vascular dementia for 19 years. It began when I was around 12 years old. He went 10 years without a diagnosis. These were the days before memory clinics. He was eventually diagnosed when he'd had a larger stroke. He was admitted to hospital, diagnosed, but we were told Dad couldn't go home. So he spent the last 9 years of his life in 3 different care homes before he passed away in April 2012, aged 85. And after Dad died, I began my D for Dementia blog, really just to share some of the things that had worked for us as a family. So, for example, music had been amazing for my dad, and also some of the things that had not gone well, because Dad had experienced some poor care as well. That led to me being shortlisted for a Rosed Media Award in the autumn of 2012. I lost out to Louis Theroux. He'd made some dementia programmes for the BBC. But in 2013, I was awarded Best Independent Voice on Older People's Issues. I worked with the government on the planning and delivery of the G8 Dementia Summit, the first time the G8 nations had ever met to discuss dementia. And I started working with care providers. So my longest serving client is a learning disability provider, and I've worked with them as their dementia consultant since 2013. And lots of other care providers as well, alongside doing some work for sort of strategic and government organisations, alongside speaking and writing and all the other things you kind of listed. I was awarded Outstanding Contribution to Dementia Care. And in June of this year, 2025, I was given an MBE in the King's Birthday Honours List.
Just a few bits then.
Just a few, yeah.
Yeah. I picked up on your dad's journey where you said he'd spent time in different care homes. As somebody, I used to be a appointee for my uncle when he was in care, and he ended up going through 3 different homes. One because of safeguarding that we had to put in, similar experience that you hear, and another 2 where they decided that they just couldn't no longer meet his needs. And that's a regular story,
Yeah,
so and I think that will feed in.
So the first care home, Dad literally spent 6 months there. He tried to strangle somebody. They didn't have really the staffing that was needed. Dad was great when we were there, but we couldn't be there all the time. So they sent him back to hospital, and he lost half his body weight over a 3-month period in effectively a shed out the back of the hospital, the dreaded EMI unit. While they argued about how his care was going to be funded, where he was going to go, we didn't have a power of attorney. We hadn't put one in place, so we had no real sort of legal say over what was going to happen. And then Dad went to a care home where he spent over 8 years, but it had numerous different managers, different owners, and in 2011 it was owned by Southern Cross, who were the biggest care provider in the country when they went out of business. It was taken over by another provider, and Dad's care dramatically declined, resulting in pressure ulcers and eventually an aspiration pneumonia that he would never recover from. But we didn't want him to die in hospital, and we were very fortunate that we found his 3rd and final care home, where he spent just 2 weeks having end-of-life care. But they were absolutely wonderful. I spoke at the Alzheimer Europe conference a few years ago about my dad's end-of-life care, because it really was just wonderful in so many ways. And I think it really helps you as a family member have that good care at the end of life. We'd had a lot of problems obviously in the months before, but it does help your grieving process to know that your loved one had that good care, and that you were supported to do and help your loved one to go through that process.
Absolutely, because I think it's really important that families feel part of the solution and not just an observer. And there were many times where me and my family very much felt like the observer. But that brings me on to the G8 Dementia Summit. So in 2013, as you said, you spoke to world leaders about your dad's dementia journey, and that was shown to delegates. So looking back on that, and given what you've just been talking about with your dad and his journey, what was significant and how significant was that for dementia awareness? And do you think it led to any lasting change?
So it had a big fanfare at the time, as you would expect, and I wasn't the only person who made a film who had lived experience. There were a few of us that did that, and sadly not everyone who made the films is still with us now as well. And I think it did have an impact at the time, and there was a follow-up event afterwards, and I think it got the world talking about dementia in a way it perhaps hadn't been before. Has it had the impact I would like, as in, is everybody having timely diagnosis, good support, living as well as they can, remaining at home for as long as they would wish to, having the care for the family that we would want for that person? No, I don't think it has, and I don't think it was ever going to be honest with you. I think it was more about that bigger global picture of putting this on the map and saying, actually, do you know what, for so long dementia has been in the shadows of conditions like, for example, cancer and heart disease, but it kills huge numbers of people. Absolutely. And it's really, really important that it has the same prominence in our minds, the same research goes into it, the same funding goes into it, and that people are enabled to have as good an outcome as possible. It is terminal, we know that. We can't cure dementia, but you can live reasonably well with it, as many people tell me, for quite a few years. But it does crucially rely on you having the support that you need at the time that you need it and in the way that you need it. And that, I think, is the piece that's really missing still for people.
Yeah, still. Because we both know the government once had a 10-year plan for dementia, which was long since abandoned. So what impact do you think the decision to abandon that plan had? And what should be the priorities now? And we'll come on to the 10-year plan shortly. So going back then, what impact do you think that decision has had? And what should be the priorities now?
So I think the difficulty is that dementia it's a very different condition to many other conditions that are cared for within the NHS. I've mentioned cancer and heart disease already, and they are very much, supported and cared for within the health service. Dementia is a little different because you will have your diagnosis through the health service, but the vast majority of the support you're going to need doesn't sit within the NHS at all. It sits much more within social care. So the impact of not having a clear priority and kind of subsuming dementia in with other conditions that are very health service led means that it doesn't really get the understanding and the prioritisation in the services that it needs, because actually they mostly need to exist in the community, in social care, through the third sector, through the charitable organisations, both local and national. And that's what's needed and that's what's missing. So I personally believe we should have a standalone strategy for dementia, because it not only is it affecting vast numbers of people. They say that you will either live with dementia, care for someone with dementia, or know someone with dementia. So it's affecting these huge numbers of people. It has a very different solution base than a lot of other conditions. And for that reason, I just wouldn't lump it all in together. I would give it its own separate strategy that allows professionals in health and care, as well as families and people living with dementia, to clearly see what the pathways are, where the support is, and what we need to do to improve people's lives.
So when we come on to the 10-year plan then for health that's just been announced, your comments make it feel as if that doesn't address the needs of people living with dementia and their families. A separate strategy needed to go alongside that, or are we talking about something different altogether?
Yeah, I think we're talking about something different altogether from a dementia perspective, but looking at the 10-year plan, I think there's some good stuff in there potentially for families. So the shift from hospital to community, vast majority of people would much rather be supported in the community. They would want to remain at home. We know that, a lot of people, would much rather live with their dementia until the end of their life in their own home. The switch to analog to digital, again, it's very positive from a systems perspective if it streamlines systems and enables people to access services in a more timely way. The downside will be where those individuals and families in their own homes don't have that digital knowledge to be able to access and really engage with platforms that will be put into place. And then the sickness to prevention, again, it's a real positive. There's a lot that we know now about risk reduction around dementia. The Lancet have published some fantastic work on this, and we have the modifiable risk factors, the things we know that we can go and try and change. And I'll give your listeners a bit of a flavour for those. Go get yourselves an eye test, get yourselves a hearing test. Some of those things can really, really help you, as well as obviously controlling things like blood pressure, etc. So I think there's some good stuff in the 10-year plan that can potentially support people with multiple different conditions, not just dementia. But the elephant in the room, particularly when you're looking at dementia, is that integration with social care. And that's going to be so crucial for people with dementia. And of course, we've got the Casey Commission as well, ongoing and yet to report. So, that is the kind of the missing structure. It's what happens to people after diagnosis and how are they supported with post-diagnostic strategies, things that they can do in their own home with their families to maximise their independence, choice and control. And that's what people want, I believe.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that, we were talking about the other day when we were just talking about the podcast is that everybody talks about dementia and everybody makes a huge focus on residential services. So all the effort goes into residential services. But we've both had personal experience, both in work and out of work. The vast majority of people needing support are living in the community and they struggle to get that right support. So what can providers do and what can local authorities do to support that silent majority that are in the community?
Well, this is going to be funding, isn't it? The dread is, how do we fund this? Because that's a lot of the problem, isn't it? It's the fun. Yeah, absolutely. This is just a revolving question that successive governments have not tackled. I understand it's a really difficult thing to tackle. It's very difficult to talk to the electorate about the idea that people might have to pay more. There's been everything mooted, hasn't there, from insurance schemes to raises in tax and all kinds of different things. These are not popular policies. They're not the kind of things that politicians want to sign up for. But what we have to understand is I don't believe the NHS succeeds. I don't believe the 10-year plan succeeds if social care is not adequately addressed alongside this. It simply is not going to work. And when you look at dementia, it is about that community support. Most people struggle to find themselves a good home care provider. The really good ones have a waiting list. 15-minute visits are disgusting and should never exist. Nope. But often local authorities will commission from a real low quality rate because obviously they're looking for that funding option that is attractive to them. And then you've got to look at sort of more lower level prevention services, things like befriending services, companion services. Some of those things are incredibly useful as someone's dementia is progressing, but they don't necessarily need full care, full personal care. They just need that sort of lower level support that enables them to live well in their home for longer. So there's an awful lot that we need to do as a country to understand what people need and to also understand that we're not just talking about older people, frail people with dementia. We're talking about younger people. We're talking about people with disabilities as well. Oh. This is not just about older people.
Yeah, I'm coming on to that one. Yeah. You're stealing my questions. So in terms of other people then, we hear in social care, everybody seems to get hung up on the primary diagnosis. Everything else just falls into the background. That really doesn't cover living with autism, learning disabilities, or brain injuries. There are resources or things that we can do to improve access for those individuals to support the right frameworks and get the right care and support in the community. Instead of just focusing on primary diagnosis, everything else isn't getting funded for because they're going into a dementia home. And I've been into dementia homes where people have been living there with autism and learning disabilities, massively inappropriately placed because they're not set up to meet the needs of those individuals. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I know you've got lots of experience in that part of the sector.
I have, and it really, really, really makes me incredibly cross, and I'm being very polite about it, that there is this commissioning sort of attitude that's existed in the past where a person, for example, with a learning disability will be diagnosed with dementia, and they will simply be told, right, okay, you can't remain in your supported living, you can't remain where you've lived for X number of years in your flat or wherever you're currently being supported. The best place for you is now, a care home where we've booked so many beds, and actually that's where you're going to go. And I've supported a lot of staff to fight against that type of sort of attitude, because it is wrong. You're quite right. Care homes, or aged care homes, are not set up well for younger people, whether they have a learning disability and autism, or whether they are somebody who has young onset. So that's dementia under the age of 65. They're just often not set up well for that. There are a few isolated examples. So what we need, again, it's the structure that fits to the person, not us trying to make the person fit to our structure. And to do that, it's really about that choice and control again, isn't it? Where does this person want to be supported? Chances are in the place they call home. And then how do we make that happen? And what sort of professionals do we need? And are they visiting professionals? Are they live-in professionals? What does that look like? What kind of support is needed from the NHS as well? Because you talk about multiple conditions, and chances are somebody might have epilepsy, they might have high blood pressure, they might have lots of other things going on as well. They might have become the subject of polypharmacy because they've now got so many different medications for so many different conditions. And actually it's really about that holistic look at each individual, rather than trying to put people into boxes and say, well, this is what you've got, this diagnosis right now, we're just going to do this with you. That really doesn't work. It's incredibly poor practice.
Yeah, that's why I think that, and it's a really bold statement for me to make, and some people will disagree and some people won't. That's why I think learning disability and autism specialists do it better. Things like health action plans, person-centered care and support planning, care pathways, they go into that much granular level and much more holistic than just look at that one condition and do a bog standard care plan that covers that and everybody else with that condition.
Yeah, and I would entirely agree with you, Barry, because I've seen the difference between what happens in good learning disability services and what happens in aged care homes. So, for example, in a good learning disability service, that staff will sit down with the person, they'll work with the person. It doesn't matter if the person is non-verbal, in inverted commas, they will find a way to find out what this person wants and support them with choice and control, goal setting, and that whole holistic approach to their life so that they can maximise the life that they have. Whereas in a care home, conversely, I've known care plans be made before someone's even moved in, without even speaking to the person. I've heard professionals say to me, "Oh, we can do them on AI now. Don't even need to speak to the person. The AI will tell me everything I need in this care plan." This is incredibly dangerous territory. We have to get back to humanity, the conversation with the person, and understanding what the person wants and allowing them to maximize what their life offers them. And instead of seeing barriers and challenges and difficulties, let's try and find solutions and opportunities.
Well said. For everybody that's listening, you didn't see how Beth got animated.
I'm on my soapbox now. Yes, I'm on my soapbox. I'm really passionate about it because it really winds me up. And why should being an older person mean that you've got dementia? You're no different to the day before you were diagnosed to the day after. Yeah. It's insane that we would suddenly assume people can't do anything.
And I used to say constantly to people that the lives of people living in care homes and with different diagnoses didn't start at the point that they entered the door of the care home. All that life history work is so valuable. All of that likes and dislikes is so valuable. But we just don't collect it as good as we could do. So, there's lots of resources out there, which I'll come on to shortly. If people go out there and look, we can do a really good job of supporting people in the community for a host of different diagnoses.
Absolutely. No, I would entirely agree with you. And I'm a huge advocate of life story work, whether you're living with dementia, whether you're not. It's a wonderful opportunity to collate the things that have been amazing in your life, maybe revisit some things that are perhaps more difficult, but that you need to find an outlet to talk about and to understand better. And I firmly believe these things should never exist in dry documents or on computers. They should be brought to life. I train a 3-stage life story approach, and stage 1 is the collecting of the information, which of course is a process that constantly evolves. Stage 2 is creating physical things we can actually touch and hold and engage with. And then stage 3 is what happens when things change for that person, when their dementia advances, when their cognition changes, when their communication skills change. And actually, how do we continue to enable someone to remain engaged with the work that we've done so that it remains meaningful through to the end of their life? I've seen it done beautifully, but often, there's some examples in care homes, but often in LD services.
I was warned you are really good. and you're getting so far ahead. I mean, each of these points, and I think it's hilarious. We've spoken about the roles of carers then, and we all want to get to a world where carers and those living with dementia are getting the right support and not having to be just grateful for the small amounts of support they get from the local authority, or the small amount of support that they can afford because they're just below thresholds. So what changes would you like to see in training and support for both social care professionals and even the unpaid carers?
Well, this is another soapbox moment, isn't it? You've set that up beautifully. So look, I always say, this is a mantra of mine, you wouldn't go to work in social care without completing the care certificate. It's mandatory. But as a family member, you can have a loved one diagnosed with dementia. You can get your leaflets and your diagnosis and all of that, and then be packed off home and basically be told to get on with it. And here you are suddenly being asked to support someone potentially for quite a few years, maybe through to the end of their life, with no training or knowledge or support at all. And there might at some point be a carers group or something you can go and join. But, it's not long-term sustainable training. It's not what any good social care provider would put into their workforce. So on the point around families, I firmly believe every family member should be offered a range of learning and education opportunities. I think tied together in Dementia Every Day through their carer development programme. It's all free, it's all online, is a fabulous place for people to start. It won't work for everybody because online doesn't work for everybody, but it is a very good place to start, and I would recommend that alongside the support that dementia carers can offer family carers. And then, of course, overarching that would be the complementary support that you would have from an Admiral nurse. And you can access an Admiral nurse in a range of different ways now. Recently on the One Show, they featured them in the branches of the Nationwide. About 200 branches of the Nationwide have now got Admiral nurse clinics. So there's many ways in which people can access support. My real bugbear is they simply often don't know about it and they aren't given it. And then in relation to the professional workforce, so of course there was that hugely alarming statistic, 29% of staff that are delivering specialist dementia support have had appropriate training for their role. That means the vast majority therefore have not. And that was absolutely terrifying and really headline grabbing when it came out from Skills for Care. And it requires investment from the sector, but it doesn't, in my view, doesn't require investment in e-learning and things like that. It has its place as a beginning point, but what staff need when they need to learn about dementia is they need something that's interactive, where you can actually speak to an expert trainer and ask your questions, pose scenarios that have happened in your workplace in a safe environment, and be able to have those open discussions. That, alongside training from an expert by experience, is, in my view, the most impactful way to train the workforce. And I'd love to just signpost your listeners, Barry, to an amazing resource if people have never heard of it. It's called A Good Life with Dementia. It has been evaluated by York University. What makes it so special is its training delivered by people living with dementia to people living with dementia who are newly diagnosed. And when the people who've been the participants in the course complete the course, they have the opportunity to then become a trainer in a future course themselves. Now that to me is that to me is just the most perfect model, because why would you not want to ask questions of somebody who's walked in your shoes, who knows what you're going to be going through and can give you the benefit of their advice and expertise? I just think it sounds like magic, and I think the NHS should commission that everywhere as a standardised post-diagnostic training offering for people living with dementia.
Well, we'll definitely share that link.
Yes,
absolutely.
Innovations in Dementia have pioneered that. It's fantastic.
Yeah. But I also used to let family members attend and sign up for training in the workplace with the staff. And it was really beneficial because then they knew what the staff were doing when they come out to the home. And I found that really useful. And they also found it useful when the staff weren't there. They could see some of the different techniques and some of the ways to assist people safely. There's a whole host of different things that we can do. So
there is, and I think social care providers are absolutely missing a trick. If you are not offering that education and training and piece with your families, whether you're a home care provider and you could do it in your offices or a community setting, or whether you are a care home, You are absolutely missing a trick if you don't upskill your staff to deliver that type of education piece and to offer that to the people that are drawing on your support. It's going to be invaluable. It's going to earn you so much kudos in your local community, and you are going to be doing an amazing public service. Why would you not do it? Perfect solution.
Absolutely. And we did a webinar previously, or a podcast previously, should I say, with Jerry, our dementia specialist here. And she was a huge mantra of, they're our partners in care. And when you start viewing them as that, you end up with much better care pathways and much better levels of support.
Absolutely. And also staff satisfaction level will go through the roof as well.
Absolutely.
Because where you work as a team, you have that team ethos. It's so much easier. If you are working from different spectrums and you're trying to come together and it's not working and you're boom with each other, that doesn't work. And often the problems that families have are because they don't understand something. Dementia is a really complex condition, and often they will take the wrong approach with a loved one, but they'll be coming from a really good place.
And it's that conversation, isn't it? Oh, they won't do that for me, or oh, they do that for me. If you get that communication piece going, you're going to find out what the family are doing that enables them to give somebody a shower or get them to take the medication, and vice versa. So that partnership in care approach is key.
Absolutely.
So it brings me on to one of your big projects right now, and we're going to talk about the rehabilitation piece. So Alzheimer's Disease International is about to release their report later this month, which we know is expected to focus on rehabilitation for people who are living with dementia. See, Jackie Poole, if you're listening, I did remember our conversation. So rehabilitation isn't always part of the conversation around dementia care. So from your perspective then, how important is it? What does good rehabilitation look like in practice? And also, can you share some light on the report?
I'm so sorry, I can't, because I simply don't know. Jackie would probably be your lady for that. You've got the wrong person on this podcast. It should be Jackie. So look, I love the idea of rehabilitation. I think actually, why have we never offered this? Why is this not a standardized pathway? If you have a stroke, it's standardized that you would be offered a rehabilitation pathway. But the diagnosis of dementia, even though, as we know, vascular dementia, then the link with stroke just doesn't exist. And it's absolutely crazy. So cognitive rehabilitation is obviously about giving people the opportunity to identify, set goals, go and try and meet those goals. It's that hope piece, isn't it? That's what rehabilitation gives you. It gives you that hope, that idea that actually you can remain independent. You can still do things. You can still maybe learn to do something new that you haven't done before. And I absolutely love it. And I know Jackie has championed this for years. I'm so pleased that it's finally going to get this international recognition. But it will just be a report like any other report if it's not seized upon and used. And I think that the rehabilitation piece fits very nicely with that 10-year health plan, that idea around community, and also that idea from sickness to prevention. Yes, dementia is a terminal illness, but actually rehabilitation could potentially give people better quality of life, less need for NHS services. So actually it becomes less about sickness and more about living well. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity with the rehabilitation piece, and I really hope that it's seized upon. It will need to be driven by an investment in occupational health, because we don't have enough of that at the moment. I do memory service peer reviews. Not every memory service has an occupational therapist within it, and to have an occupational therapy workforce that could work with people in their own homes, to assess their homes and support them in making environmental changes, as well as doing things like goal setting, I think would just be a real game changer, a real practical game changer for families and people living with dementia. So in advance of the report, and whatever it's going to say, I don't know, I'm going to signpost you to a fabulous free resource called My Life, My Goals. It was created in 2011. It came out of some work that was done during lockdown on Zoom, via Zoom meetings with people living with dementia. It was headed up by the fabulous people at Innovations in Dementia. And it's my go-to whenever I talk to people about rehabilitation. It's based on cognitive rehabilitation. And it basically, as the title suggests, this is my life. This is what my life means to me. This is what I want out of my life. These are the goals I'm going to try and set myself. And it's a wonderful, positive resource that offers people opportunity and hope. So it's freely available. I'm sure we can pop a link, shareable link with this podcast recording. And I would advise everyone to go and have a look at that, shout about it, share it. It's freely downloadable. It also has videos that go with it as well if you prefer to look rather than read.
And it's remembering for me, rehabilitation will prevent reoccurrence and readmission to hospitals. So that 10-year plan, you know, having rehabilitation factored into that, it's such an amazing pillar to focus on. You know,
absolutely. We're treating, if you're listening to this podcast, cognitive rehabilitation, we believe this is a very important thing to include. It truly is. And you know, and it's also something I would also say to care providers, because you will have a care provider audience at QCS. And I would say, you know, there's something there for care providers, because even if you're seeing someone in the more latter stages of dementia and the standardized cognitive rehabilitation pathways may not be suitable for that individual, you can still do things on a really, really, really small, granular scale to support people to have a little goal, whether it's to move a little bit more, whether it's to be able to eat some certain foods independently. There can be very small things that you can still try and work with someone to achieve, and I would absolutely encourage that as well.
Great stuff. Look forward to seeing the report, and then I might come back to you for some more.
No, so, Jackie Paul's the lady you need.
wouldn't that be a podcast? You and Jackie on the same podcast?
It would be, except that we both agree with each other, so you're not going to get any argument.
We'll have Wes Streeting as well then, and we can have a three-way of you and Jackie telling me exactly what he needs to do.
And I'm very happy to talk to him. After I got my lovely MBE news, I had a lovely sort of you get sort of letters and bits and pieces that come your way, nice little emails and stuff. And I've been meaning to engage with his department. It's on my very long to-do list.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. So let's do some quick fire questions then. Apart from the resources that you've already suggested, what book or resource would you recommend to anyone wanting to understand dementia better?
Oh, that's so difficult, isn't it? So,
and if you haven't written one, why not?
I have been offered a book deal. Being a busy mum with young kiddies at the moment makes that really tricky. It's kind of a little bit of a retirement plan of mine. And there's some wonderful stuff out there already. So if I was going to recommend a book, well, it would kind of be three, but it's all by the same author. I would recommend Wendy Mitchell's books. So Wendy Mitchell was a lady who lived with dementia. She taught the world so much about her experiences, and she lived independently at home until the end of her life. I just feel her books, they really resonate with me. She was a wonderful lady, a wonderful friend. So I will admit I'm completely biased, but I just feel they add so much to our understanding of dementia. So I would recommend Wendy's books, and if you can't afford to buy books about dementia, do have a look at Reading Well for Dementia. It's in your local library. If you can't afford to buy books, go and have a look at that Reading Well list, because everyone on there is a gem as well. For a resource, I'm going to be really cheeky, and I'm going to put in so I do part-time communications work for Dementia Community. I host 20 webinars a year. Lots of different experts come along to talk to me. And I also write the news for Dementia Community. It's a really good place. I'm biased because I do it, but it is a good place for really varied news and up-to-date stuff on everything from resources, free resources, all the way through to academic papers and the latest that's happening in health and care.
And it goes without saying, we'll share the link.
Thank you.
Yeah. So who then has inspired you most in your work?
Well, I would have to say first and foremost my dad. That won't surprise you to say that, because that's where it all began. And I never imagined that my dad's life with dementia would lead to any of this. I was just going to go and get a normal job, and D for Dementia, my blog, was just going to be a little sideline. So it was never, ever going to be any of this. But since my dad died, I've been also very, very fortunate to meet many wonderful people living with dementia. Wendy, just one amongst them. And they have all inspired me in different ways. They've also all taught me different things. And if I get the choice and I'm able to, I always have an expert bar experience when I'm delivering a workshop, training, anything I'm doing like that, even if it's just through films. If I can have that lived experience voice in there, I will have it, because it's so impactful and I still learn so much. So I'm very grateful to everyone living with dementia, who supported my work and supported me over the years, because you've made a really big difference. So thank you.
If you could change one thing in social care tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh,
just one.
Just one. So I'm going to string you a sentence because I'm going to call that one. So I'm going to say that everyone has access to the expertise they need in the location they choose and in a way that makes sense to them. That's a huge thing to deliver, but that's what I would like, that nobody would feel alone, that everybody would have that trusted partner alongside them, that trusted professional partner alongside their family. That would be my wish.
Wow, and that feeds into so much of this conversation that we've just been having about right support, right time. So finally, I can't believe we've been talking this long already. Where can people go to follow you and your work and learn about the projects you're involved in?
So I have a website, bethbritton.com. I will confess it's not always quite as up to date as it should be. The MBE's on there, but a few other things that have happened since haven't been. It's on my very long list of things to sort out, but it is a good place and you can contact me through that as well. And I am on socials. So LinkedIn, a fabulous place to connect. I really love LinkedIn these days. It's become my real go-to. But I am still on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. I have a D for Dementia Facebook page and I'm also on Blue Sky. So different ways you can find me. But yeah, I always like to hear from people and be involved in different projects and things. That's what I love about my work. It's the variety is the spice of life.
I'm going to throw another one in because you opened yourself up to this one and it wasn't on what we discussed. But give us some tips for managing a to-do list.
Oh, my heavens, you don't want any tips from me on that, Barry. I am absolutely terrible. Let me tell you, I have my master to-do list on the computer, which then gets distilled it down into a written to-do list that has to just sit on my desk so I can visually see it even when the computer's not on. And then when I'm really, really desperate and there's really urgent things, it's a post-it note. And then eventually little things that get written on post-it notes get done. I screw the post-it notes up, and I very recently got a new kitten and I dropped one of these screwed up post-it notes the other day. I normally take them for recycling. I dropped it on the floor. She thinks they're great for football, so she knocks them around the room. So that's my very complicated, not very ordered way of doing things.
It's still a process.
It's a process. Yeah.
Anyway, I've really enjoyed chatting with you today, Beth. I really have. And I look forward to looking at most of these resources, sharing them with people, and then potentially having a further chat with you when the reports come out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Barry.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Care Social. Thanks for listening. If you found the podcast helpful, share it with your colleagues. If you want to find out more about Beth, check out the links to her socials we've included in the podcast. Have a topic you'd like us to cover, or do you want to join me as a guest? Comment below or email us at qcs@qcs.co.uk. You can also add me on LinkedIn. Until next time, bye for now.